Hey everyone, Pete Calandra here. As I'm sure some of you know, it's really difficult to find the full printed score for film music. About a decade ago, there used to be some trading sites where people would pass PDFs back and forth, and that was great. I didn't find out about that until they started being closed down, and since I had nothing to trade of any value, I sort of lost out on that. There's a company, though, now called Omni Music Publishing, and there's a link to their website in the description box below that is slowly making film scores available in full manuscript. And I've been purchasing a few of these. And the reason I'm purchasing these things is twofold. One, so that I can study them, and two, so that I can have more material to present to my film scoring classes. What I've been doing for my film scoring classes is finding piano reductions or piano arrangements online and purchasing those and using those as the basis for my teaching. That's okay, but that doesn't really give you the full picture as looking at the orchestral score to see things on a much more detailed level, and also to be able to see how the strings are voiced, how the winds are voiced, how many brass that is, how the percussion is written, all the stuff that's really, really, really valuable and useful that you can't get just from a piano reduction and is very difficult to get from just listening to a recording. A great technique for assimilating the material found in a score is to take that score and play through every line and sequence it. This way you can really study how it's put together in a much more detailed way than you can by plucking out notes on a piano. What I've done for today's little session is I've sequenced the main titles music of James Horner's score to the 1989 film Glory, and it's called A Call to Arms. While I've sequenced most of the cue, I haven't sequenced everything because I have a few points that I'd like to make, and I've just worked on those bits. And I've also made an orchestral reduction. So there's some materials that are also linked in the description box below that you can download for free that will help you to study this material. Before we continue on, let me take care of a little business. If you like this video, give a thumbs up. For more content, please subscribe, and to be notified, ring that bell. Please leave any comments or questions down below. Thanks so much for watching, and let's get right into it. Okay, so I've sequenced this in Pro Tools, and I'm just going to play it right from where the main melody starts. We'll talk about some of these salient features I want to bring out, and then we'll play it again. Let's listen to the different sections. This is the opening bit. All right, moving ahead. Now we'll go to the second bit that I want to talk about. All right, the next bit. And we'll overlap this with the previous music. And now for the last bit. Just a couple of things, right? You can see right at the beginning, yes, there's this pedal point here and there's some low notes, but basically the melody's in a very small register. Then in the next bit, it's in a wider register vertically. Then in the third bit, right, it stretches out more. And then in the end, it's even a wider vertical stretch, meaning from the bottom note all the way to the top note. So that gives us kind of like a wedge structure. That wedge structure actually occurs on multiple levels, right? It starts off simply, it builds, it gets more intense, it gets more intense. That's one way that you can think of the wedge structure. Also, the way that the melodic material is presented is also built in sort of a wedge. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is that the first iteration of a melody, and I'll show you the sheet music in a minute, but I want to talk about the concepts first, starts off with a single note line. Then there's two-part line writing, right? So you're going from single line to two-part line. Then you're going to three-part line. And then at the end, you're going into a, four parts, but really spread out. So it gets really more intense with the number of parts that are being written. Additionally, the key relationships are interesting. Now, I wouldn't call these things modulations because modulations in tonal music have to be prepared somehow. And he just sort of moves through different key relationships. And I think that that's really a feature of film music that we all have to get used to, is that the background structural tonality that you'd find, let's say, in music of Haydn, Mozart, or Beethoven is not really present in a lot of film music. You have to be able to change keys really quickly and have things make sense over the long arc of the cue and the film itself. So what do I mean by this? Well, he starts out the bit in G Mixolydian with the single note line. Then the next bit, it goes into G major, even though he does have an F natural in there. And then he goes from G major down to E flat major, and then down to D major. But when you're going to D major, he's taking that width, the orchestral width, and he's expanding it out. So even though you're going down a key, you're still feeling like you're being lifted up because the notes are an octave higher than they were previously. It's a really interesting technique. So let's take a look at some of the sheet music, and we'll break that down. At the beginning of this cue, we have what I call the blow the horn theme. And I call it that because that's the lyrics. And this is sung by the Boys Choir of Harlem. And it's based on a G Mixolydian based around the 1 chord, which is G major, and the 7 chord, which is F major. And it's basically just arpeggiating that triad. And this is being played over a long G pedal point in the viola doing muted tremolos. Now, one thing that he does here that I'll show you is that you can look and that there's almost a time signature change every measure, and he's doing that to catch the picture change. If you watch the video that I've linked below, you'll be able to see that. So let's take a listen to the percussion at the beginning of this cue. There is some percussion before this, but this is right where the main melody starts. Basically the snare with a little timpani roll around in the downbeat, and it's just a march figure. If we look at the harp, the piano, the synth bass, the viola, and the regular basses. If we look at what's happening with the lower pitched instruments, we'll find something really interesting. We've got in the harp and the piano these A's, right? And then we've got in that synth bass a G. This sounds, 2 octaves lower, and this G in the viola. So we've got an A and a G cluster down there. It's really interesting. Let's take a listen to that. Really dark. And that's really cool. The next bit is also in G, but it's G major. And it's interesting because in this blow the horn theme, the F is really prominent. It's even the highest pitch. But when you notice here, he's introducing G major, but he holds off playing the F sharp for a little while. There's our F sharp, and then he goes right back to the F, and then the next bit, and then the F sharp comes back in, right? So there's a lot of that right there. We went from a single note line to 2 parts, and the melodic width here is just an octave. We go from this F up to this F here. Right here, we have a B as the lowest note and a G as the highest note. So it's an octave and a sixth. Great. So a couple of other things here that are really interesting is that in the low strings, he has that right? You see that the melody line is right, that F sharp. So even though the chord's a G, he's got that F sharp in there. Now, he prepared you for having dissonances in the lower registers with that opening chord. So see how he prepared it at the beginning, and now this is just a different way of using a dissonance in the low end, the lower pitch register in the composition. So that's kind of cool. And then he doubles the choir with clarinet and bass clarinet. Let's take a listen. that's really nice because it gives us a really hollowish kind of a texture that combines with the choirs. So let's play the boys' choirs with the clarinet and the bass clarinet. And that's nice. And then as the piece progresses, where you've got sort of those higher pitches doing the sixths descending, he brings in the oboe. He's layering his orchestration as the piece is going down. Okay, so another cool thing here is he's moving to E flat, and he does a little something here that he expands upon later on in the piece, where he's got the G and he's going to E flat. He just goes down stepwise to get there from G, F, E flat. Right there. Okay, this is in 3 parts, and the actual pitches in the melody line are doubled in octaves. So it's actually... And then the... Right, so the violin 1 and violin 2 are in octaves, and then the viola is down in that middle voice. I've written it this way so that it's a little easier for me to play on the piano. It just starts out... Now that's cool. He goes to the flat 7 there. You're in E flat, flat 7. Shades of the Mixolydian from the very open. Right? And then that sort of echoes of the choir bit from the previous section, but we're in a different key. And then this... Right, that little dissonance on the downbeat, again, brought from the previous section in. And then this continues on, and then the next bit, we're going to D major, all right? And if you notice here, the highest pitch is a B flat, and then down to this low D flat. So he's spread out the register of the orchestra instruments a little bit more than the previous section. Now, remember how I said that he did a descending line to get from G to F? He's going from E flat down to D in the next bit, and he takes that idea of the descending bass line and adds an ascending melody line. So it's sort of like a wedge shape. And that wedge shape is really important to this cue because that sort of, in a nutshell, in this next bit I'll play for you, encapsulates the entire cue, where it starts out very simply and it constantly is building, and it's building in multiple levels at one time. He starts out with a single line melody, then a 2-part melody, then a 3-part melody, and then he's going from E flat down to D, but because the melody is jumping up an octave and the verticality of the orchestral spread is wider, it actually sounds like it's moving up, even though the key is moving down. It's like really cool effect. Actually, let me take it from right here, because we start with E flat and we go down to E natural. We start from B flat and we go all the way up to F sharp here. So you see how the wedge also overlaps. It's kind of really cool. 1. So that's really cool. I really like that. So the bass line is going 1, 2, 3. And the melody's going. That's really cool too. So stretches the melody line out from this B flat here all the way to this F sharp up here. That's really cool. So let's take a listen to that with the sequenced bit. Okay, so that's really cool. And there's a couple things where I don't have any manuscript written, but I thought I'd bring these out for you to see. So we get to this end bit here, and I'm going to play just the strings. So this is the strings here. That's really cool, but listen to the trumpet that's going against that. Right? So it's playing a D and then playing a C on that against that D. So again, that Mixolydian concept comes back again here, and that's very Jerry Goldsmith what he did there. You think about the score to Patton and the kind of trumpet fanfares that he's doing. It's really, really amazing. Let's take a listen from right here and out. You'll hear the trumpet still. So you'll see that this is G, B, so octaves with the sixth, right? So it's violin 1 and violin 2 divisi. Okay, so right here, we've got this half-step rub. F sharp, D, and again with the high D. And this is, right, this is the top line of violin 2. And then this is the bottom line of violin 2, the brown one. And that's really cool the way he does that. You get that nice half-step rub right here, and then he repeats that here, and then the whole step rub here. So it's really, really emotional. They're kind of like struck suspensions, but they're really, really high up in the pitch register. It's really beautiful string writing. So let's do a little review of some of the concepts here that I want to share with you. The cue starts out with a single note line in G Mixolydian, then moves on to two-part writing mostly in G major. Then it changes to E flat major, descending bass line from G, F to E flat. When he gets to E flat major, it's three-part writing, and he widens the spacing of the score. Then he uses contrary motion with a wedge shape to change the key to D major and opening up the score spacing to 5 octaves. Then we heard at that end bit in D major, we heard him overlapping that Mixolydian feel with the trumpet and then doing some of that really beautiful, intricate, high-pitched violin writing with some of those suspensions, the half steps and the whole steps, where the soprano line of violin 2, because violin 2 is divisi, is moving and creating some nice, juicy, pungent dissonances that get resolved right afterwards. And it just adds a lot of emotion to the score. So that's a quick look at this. Let me know if you've found any of these concepts helpful. Let me know if you'd like me to do a few more of these. I know I'm doing a series right now on improvisation for people that don't really improvise, but I can pepper these in occasionally if there's an interest for it. Again, if you like this video, give a thumbs up. For more content, please subscribe, and to be notified, ring that bell. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Pete Calandra, and I'll catch you on the next one.